Welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy. I'm Luke.
And I'm Emma.
And this week we are discussing part 2 of chapter 12, Jack.
Exciting.
Picking up right where we left off, and that was Fitz walking away from listening in on Jack and Lord Golden or Amber's conversation and sitting down in the secret passageways to spy on the Narcheska.
Yes, he sort of sat down out of sadness, realized he's in front of the Narcheska's hole, and then decides to escape his current problems and his deep missing of Night Eyes.
And everybody, because he is alone now.
Yes, of his deep feeling of being alone, I suppose, by spying on the Narcheska, because there are voices happening, and he's curious to know what's going on.
Yeah. The Narcheska sat on a low stool in the middle of the room. She was weeping silently as she clasped her elbows and rocked back and forth. Tears had tracked down her face and dripped from her chin, and they still squeezed out from her closed eyes. A wet blanket shawled her shoulders. She held herself in such silence amidst her pain that I wondered if she had just endured some punishment from her father or Peter. So we come in onto this scene where she is obviously in a horrific pain at the moment, and Peter walks in.
Yes, and when Peter arrives, it dispels the idea that maybe he was the one who had, quote, punished her, because he seems so anxious and wants so badly to help alleviate the pain.
Yeah, he's bringing in his cloak, but bundling like a sack, and he's hurrying to Elliania's side, asking, which one is it? Obviously, the first-time reader does not know, but this is asking which one of the dragons is puffing up and angry and hurting Elliania. And she says, the green serpent, I think. I cannot tell. When he burns so hot that the others seem to burn too. She lifted her hand to her mouth and bit down on the meat of her thumb, hard. No, Peter exclaimed. He caught up the dripping hem of the blanket, folded it twice, and offered it to her. He had to shake her hand free of her jaws. Then, eyes closed, she clamped her teeth on the blanket edge. I saw the clearly demarcated prints of her teeth on her hand as it fell away to her side. Peter says that he's sorry that it took so long. He had to go secretly to bring this back, and we find out that his cloak is full of snow.
And this is all sort of a big mystery, right? When you're first reading this, you want to know what are they hiding? What's going on?
Like the green serpent, what's going on with that?
Yes, what does this mean? And it's really interesting because, like I think we've mentioned before, and especially last episode, when Fitz is in this sort of recounting mode, he does not put forward any of his own feelings of what's going on. He is just recounting what's happening. Sometimes he'll add a thought that he had when seeing this that was disproven immediately, but not very often do we get any sort of reaction from Fitz himself. So we as the reader just sort of have to live vicariously through the hole in this wall to just find out what happens. And what happens is the blanket is taken, the wet blanket that is currently on the back of Elliania is removed, and it is revealed that she has a very large tattoo.
Yeah, and it's not just that she is tattooed, which is also surprising enough for Fitz, but that it's so different from other Out Islander markings and tattoos that he's seen so far. This is a full color. He describes it as beautiful, colors brilliant, and the designs sharp and clear. The colors had a sparkling metallic quality to them, reflecting the lamplight like a polished blade. The creatures that sprawled and twined on her shoulders and spine and down her ribs gleamed and glistened. And one, an exquisite green serpent that began at the nape of her neck and meandered down her back amongst the others, stood out puffily, like a fresh burn blister. It was oddly lovely, for it gave the impression the creature was trapped just below her skin, like a butterfly trying to break free from its chrysalis. At the sight of it, Peter gave a sharp exclamation of sympathy. And as he reveals his cloak full of snow, he takes a cup of it and puts it on the serpent, and it sizzles.
Yes. So extremely warm. I should also mention that this is described as being from her shoulder to her waist. So it is a very large tattoo, and also it is not unusual for the Out Islanders to be tattooed, which we have discussed previously. They
Right.
came in showing their tattoos, but typically Out Islander tattoos are simple patterns of blue that denote different things for their culture. They're not big multicolored back pieces of dragons.
Right.
So that in itself is already...
I guess they're not dragons either. They're serpents,
They're
right?
serpents, yeah.
Yeah.
But we know as rereaders that this is the same tattoo, or at least similar enough to what Beloved has on their back as well.
Correct.
And this is something that Fitz doesn't know yet, but we'll learn later. And it's really interesting because I don't believe Beloved talks about pain coming from the tattoo currently. Like they used to be tortured in the same way Elliania was through the tattoo, I believe.
Did they? Oh, okay.
And it is no longer happening.
I don't remember that.
I thought, oh, well, maybe the torture was just that the tattoo existed.
Maybe. I'm not sure. I don't remember much about it.
I just remember Beloved talking about having sympathy and knowing exactly what Elion is going through. But maybe not. I don't know. Whatever. Maybe I'm misremembering. I'll recant what I've said. But I believe that there is some sort of discussion on that. And I point this out only to say that whatever is happening here, whatever type of magic, because I don't think we get a rundown of why this happens. We just know it is the Pale Woman doing something to Elliania.
Right.
I'm curious to know if potentially the reason that Beloved doesn't also feel pain from the serpents, if they don't feel pain, is because this tattoo is created with the serpent venom that the whites have now collected over the years. We know that they are doing experimentation with the venom they got from She Who Remembers in the serpent cave, whatever. And that there is a lot happening with their use and trying to sort of mimic skill with that. But I don't know. I mean, it could also be as simple as, this is another theory, I suppose, that this tattoo was made with the rocks that are the memory stone, and it is somehow being manipulated with the skill through Kebble Rawbread the same way the Pale Woman is communicating with the maid.
I think we learn about it later of how it's actually done, but I don't quite remember. In my mind, I lean towards it was made with like the serpent venom / saliva. And I also lean toward, in my mind, again, I don't know if this is completely accurate or not, but that Beloved just had a tattoo done, but it was not with that special ink. It also, like, blood also feels like it might be involved. I don't remember. There's something kind of wiggling in the back of my mind that I just don't quite remember. I think maybe Dwalia talks about it in the last trilogy kind of thing, where it's a very far away from this scene.
Yeah,
but
it could be.
So if you guys remember, let us know. We're doing a lot of speculating right now.
Yes, but I don't know. I think it's interesting to think on.
Yeah.
But like we said, the snow is sizzling. This is physically a very hot, like her skin is hot enough to sizzle snow.
Hotter than, 212 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 Celsius.
So probably not super comfortable.
Magically hot.
Yes. Yeah.
So Peter says, lie down on the cloak. And She's whimpering as it quenched the burning, and I could see her face now in the sweat that ran from her brow as well as the tears that still flowed down her face. After a few moments, she began to shiver, but she did not roll away from the snow. And he says that he's going to go out with the other blanket and get more snow because it's basically turning to water already.
Right.
Because her back is liquefying the snow. She says, "Hurry. I will, little one, I will. Our mothers bless you for what you endure. Damn these farseers and their stiff-necked ways, and damn those dragon breeders." The Narcheska rolled her head back and forth on the snow bed. I just wish I knew what she wanted, what she expected me to do about it, past what we have done. We both know what she expects, he said harshly. I am not a woman yet, she said quietly. It is against the mother's law. It is against my law, Peter clarified, as if his will were the only one that mattered in this. I will not see you used that way. There must be another path. Unwillingly, he asked, Has Henja come to you? Has she said why you are tormented like this? Her nod was a jerk of her head. She insists I must bind him to me, open my legs to him to be sure of him before I leave. It is the only path she believes in. Elliania spoke through gritted teeth. I slapped her and she left, and then the pain became fourfold.
This does imply that she was already suffering in pain.
Yes.
And then as a direct action that she took, it gets worse. But also I want to talk about how there seems to be this plot by the Pale Woman to get these two together, to get Elliania and Dutiful together. It seems like maybe if they lay together, they'll have child, which is her plan. Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't matter. But either way, that seems the path that the Pale Woman seems to want to follow. And we do know, spoiler alert, Dutiful and Elliania do end up together, and they do end up having children. And so I'm just sort of wondering how, if you have an opinion on how that may be different from what the Pale Woman wants, if ultimately she gets her way.
In her plans, she's still around. She has a Farseer child that is under her control through her mother. Because I'm assuming that there is more steps to this, and she wouldn't just release the families and the mothers and the grandmothers of the mother house of the Narwhal clan without further action being taken after the child is born.
Okay.
And maybe through that can somehow end the Farseer line.
It is really interesting to me that the Farseer line is so important in the grand scheme of things. Like, obviously this is a book, right?
Yeah.
But it just is kind of funny that, like, the only thing standing in the way of the White Prophets as a whole from winning this whole, like, getting rid of dragon thing is the Farseers, which is so far away from where their island even is. And then also, like, just not even that developed insofar as, like, how much more, I don't know, invention there is to begin. Develop feels mean to say, but it just,
yeah,
it feels like they're such barbarians. They're such barbarians in the middle of nowhere, so far away, that for them to be the one thing standing in the way is kind of crazy.
But Buckkeep has agency. Bingtown, sure, might be another hotbed because they actually have Elderling cities there, but they're a city-state that didn't have independence before, 2 years ago. And they were beset by Chalced on one side and very small, and being taxed 50% by Jamalia on the other end. They can't survive very well there, right? They're not going to be the center of some influence for the whole world, except when they gained independence and a dragon actually, all those events that Beloved also sparked off, right?
True.
So the other side of that is Chalced is not going to be the center of our story because they're very focused on just expansion, and they're led by a duke of greed right
Right.
now. Jamalia is ruled by satrap Cosgo, who again self-centered. They're very, very far south. Yes, closer to Claris, but maybe they're closer to Claris's influence as well due to that. And then we have the Out Islands, which are very barbaric. But they have a lot of superstitions, and they also had the Pale Woman who went directly to the Out Islands to influence that area through their stories. And yes, it was to counter Six Duchies, which lastly, the Six Duchies have agency, right? They have a fully fledged kingdom. Yes, they're kind of always in conflict with Chalced and sometimes in conflict with the Out Islands, mostly just raids from both sides. It's not a full blown war,
Mhm.
but they just made an alliance with the Mountain Kingdom, and they have access to Elderling cities and expansion of like knowledge of dragons from through that side. And they're big enough with enough military, plus they have the skill and it's developed, and they have a history of learning the skill and this magic. And I think that the skill itself is kind of seen as the avenue through these futures,
Okay.
because it always revolves around some sort of skilled user
That's
or
fair.
some magic to connect with dragons in some sort of way, right? Tintaglia was able to reach out to Rain,
Right.
and then through Rain, through Elderling magic, the Dream Box to Malta. That's always through some sort of use of that magic in order to kind of direct all these plot lines. So I feel like the Six Duchies were the biggest player that weren't easily influenced or just not able to be influential
Okay.
because their size. So I think the Six Duchies was kind of like the wild card to Claris's plan still, and they had enough, options and choices that they could direct things. And with Fitz being kind of the wild card.
That's fair, I think.
Yeah.
And I suppose, I mean, if you think about it, as far as we can tell from the world that as we know it, Fitz chivalry is a blend of magic that hasn't really happened before. And now, because of his help in bringing Dutiful to life, and he has Nettle, he is spreading the change of magic, the evolution of the way magic looks.
Right.
I mean, I guess I understand from that standpoint as well, right? Like he's starting the spark of change that is big. So I do get it. It's like sometimes I take a step back and I'm like, whoa, this is kind of kind of crazy.
Everything's on the Farseers.
Yes. But yes, so all that to say, ultimately this is going to happen. Elliania and Dutiful are going to get together.
Yeah.
And they're going to have children and they're going to be together. But right now, like you said, it's probably more about the control of the child that would result in that.
That's what I assume anyways. Did you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think your idea was really good. Yeah, I genuinely was like, I just don't get it if it's going to happen anyway. But I like what you said and the way you phrased it.
Okay. But Henja is not there because Peter's like, okay, where is she? I want to go find her and and kill her, basically. And we get another hint here. Elliania says that she's gone to town to further her cause there. Just as well, our position here is difficult enough without having to explain why you've killed my maid in a fury. So we also, as I mentioned, get that other hint that she has gone into town again and that she has a specific cause in town.
Yes, this is kind of big because, as we may recall, earlier in this book, Fitz watches Henja leave the castle and decides not to follow her
because of Dutiful's ride.
Yes, he decides to stay on and get to that later. But it looks like he's kind of dropped the ball and has not been following Henja at all. I guess most likely what has happened is he told Chade about it and assumed Chade's taking care of it. And Chade's probably assuming because this has to deal with the prince that Fitz is taking care of it, and so it sort of just slipped through the cracks. But I feel like it's a little frustrating that this isn't the spark to get him to care more about what Henja's doing.
He's got a lot going on.
He
and
has
on
a
his
lot
mind.
going on. He just went through a very emotional scene, but I don't know. I'm kind of annoyed. We've had a couple people write in about how this trilogy is a little bit annoying because of how much Fitz sort of just misses. And yes, he has a lot going on, but I think we all get to be a little bit annoyed that it's right there. He could right now be like, I wonder what she's up to. I should look into that again. And he doesn't.
Peter is obviously incredibly mad, but that thought of like, oh, it would be hard to explain the death of my maid kind of brings him back to reality, but not away from his anger. And Elliania just kind of has to laugh and say, it is like Henja only believes that there is one way for a woman to bind a man to her, right? But it's not the only thing that I believe in. I'm putting my hope that pride may bind a man even where there is no love. She says, that's the thought I cling to now. So we see right here the kind of beginnings of her idea of, hey, bring me the dragon's head.
Yeah.
Or at least some sort of challenge.
Right.
To make him go along.
Which I gotta say is pretty ingenious for a 13-year-old. I was making fun of her a few chapters ago for being like, I'm an adult because technically I'm 13 in your culture. I was making fun of her, but she's pretty mature. She's got a lot of ideas. She's thinking outside of the box. She's staying true to her culture and ensuring that she also gets done what is asked of her, which I think is pretty admirable.
I will say, just going back on our conversation about why the Pale Woman wants Elliania and Dutiful to get together, it's not just necessarily about kids.
Okay.
I just thought about this too. It's just like another way to bind a woman to a man, right? Or a man to a woman.
Mm-hmm.
If they get together like that, Dutiful might feel more bound and listen more closely to Elliania and then be able to lure them out to the out islands easier.
Oh, that's fair.
Which is what the dragon challenge ends up doing anyways, right?
Yes.
That's kind of the goal, is to bring Dutiful out to the out islands.
That's fair. So, okay, let's just sidestep for a second. If Dutiful goes to the island, was the plan always to try to get him to kill the dragon? Does it have to be Dutiful killing the dragon? Or was it just to kill Dutiful on the island? If he kills the dragon, it doesn't matter if he lives or not.
I think the plan is to get the Farseers to kill the dragons, right? Because that turns them, Bing Town, against the Six Duchies. There's no thought of alliance there anymore. And the issue is Fitz is still the catalyst.
Okay.
Right? He can change certain futures to different paths with his actions. So him going along kind of affects that.
Okay. Interesting.
At least that's what I remember. Again, it's been a few years.
All right. So we have that sending away. We have that ending to the conversation between Elliania and Peter. She sort of just says, I have a plan. Please go get me more snow. And he leaves. And when he leaves, Fitz watches as she sort of moves around the snow again to make sure that there's more snow on where she needs. And then she also lays back down on the snow. She took a breath and lifted the back of her hands to her brows. I recalled that one scroll had said that this was how Out Islanders prayed, but the only words she said were, my mother, my sister, for you. My mother, my sister, for you. It soon became a toneless chant in time with her breathing.
A little insight into cultural and religion things there, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Robin Hobb doesn't touch on praying much besides the Wintro chapters.
So we get to see a look at what Out Islanders think of as prayer, or how they do their version of prayer.
Yeah. This could be a special case as well for Elliania.
True.
Because Fitz seems slightly knowledgeable as to the knowledge of Islanders praying, and he seems slightly surprised at the content of what she's doing as well. So maybe it's not typical, or maybe it's not like a usual prayer that they do. Extenuating circumstances.
Right. And it could be, just that normally there's not words said, or maybe there's special words said, who knows?
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah. But I would also say that there is a chance that there's just a bad translation happening, which does seem to happen throughout these books, where we see, like, even in the excerpts at the beginning of the chapters, there will be somebody very confidently talking about a subject, and then we, the readers, know that it is not true.
True.
So, I don't know. Interesting thoughts all around, but he does sort of push back from that wall and think about how brave she is to be handling such pain, even though he doesn't really understand what the root cause of it is. I wondered what I had just witnessed and the significance of it. My candle had burned down to half its length. I took it up slowly and climbed the rest of the stairs to Chade's tower. And when he gets to the top of the tower, it is cold and no one is there, and he just really went there for the comfort of familiarity, and it's not a welcome area. So
it's not much cleaned. Thick hasn't done his chores there today.
No. So he sort of cleans up, starts a fire, and then writes a little note to Chade.
It's talking about all of everything that he witnessed, basically, the scene plus the Henja stuff.
Yes, I left the paper on Chade's chair. I hoped he would come up to the rooms tonight, and he sort of hopes that Chade will understand whatever Fitz is missing. But I do want to point out, I think, and I could be wrong, I think that this gets taken by...
Thick?
Yes, thank you. Lost the name. I think that this paper gets taken by Thick because I believe Thick has been sort of taking papers and giving them to the piebalds that he's working with. He doesn't really know what the importance of the papers are, but I do believe that papers get picked up. I could just be making that up. That could just be a false memory.
It feels like we both are having struggles as to like the exact plot of this thread in Golden Fool. Like we both are like, we're not really sure. We think, but we're not really sure.
Yeah.
It's tough to remember this one, I think. I don't know if that's just because it's not as memorable as the other plot points of this trilogy, or if, I don't know, just forgettable, or if we just haven't read them for a while.
Could be any of those things.
Eventually, he does make his way back down to his own rooms and listens, doesn't hear anything, so he assumes that Jack and Lord Golden are gone. I had no wish to confront either of them just now. I decided, words to say to both of them, but I was not yet calm enough to say them. Instead, he decides to go out. He needs to be away from the castle for a time, away from all the interconnecting webs of intrigue and deceit. I felt I was drowning in lies.
This is something that's really important about Fitz's character, I think, and that is that he feels like, to me, like he is very sensitive to lying, quote unquote, and his idea of what a lie is really interesting because it sort of changes from situation to situation, and that like if he's doing it for the greater good of someone, it isn't really a lie, but it does feel, he does know that he's like holding himself back, and so it is a lie. I don't know, it's very real and very human, of this sort of moral wrestling of feeling like because you can't give all of a truth, then there is a lot of lying. And I think that's his biggest struggle in the Farseer world, is that he doesn't feel as though he has anyone he can just give the whole truth to. There's every aspect of his life when he is Fitz chivalry is a choice of hiding some part of himself from someone for whatever reason. And so that's why I feel like this blow of the secret that Beloved is keeping from him feels so big, because that was sort of the one person outside of Night Eyes that he was open with, and that he didn't feel he was hiding anything. And so to find that there are lies on both sides is just a lot.
Mm-hmm. So he has to head out. And as he's going down the main entrance, the main hall towards the servants' entrance, he feels a shiver of wit and looks up and sees the veiled Bingtown youth. Through the lace that obscured his features, I caught that faint blue glow of his eyes. It tightened the flesh on the nape of my neck. I wanted to turn aside or even turn around and walk away, anything to avoid him, but such an action would have looked very strange. I steeled myself and resolutely walked toward him. I averted my eyes, but then when I dared to glance up at him, I felt his gaze on me. He slowed as we approached one another. When he was very close, I bobbed my head, a servant's gesture of acknowledgement. But before I could pass him, he stopped and stood still. "Hello," he greeted me. I stiffened and became a correct Buckkeep servant. I bowed from the waist. "Good evening, sir. May I be of service?" Yes. Perhaps you could." He lifted his veil and pushed back his hood as he spoke, baring his scaled face. I could not help but gawk at him. Up close, his visage was even more remarkable than what I had glimpsed earlier. I had overestimated his age. He was years younger than Hap or Dutiful, though I could not guess his exact age. His height made his boyish face incongruous. The silvery gleam in his scaling on his cheekbones and brow reminded me of the Narcheska's glimmering tattoos. Abruptly, I recognized that this scaling was what the Jamalian makeup Lord Golden sometimes wore mimicked. It was an odd little insight, one I stored away with all the other significant things that the fool had never bothered to explain to me. Doubtless, when it suited his purpose, he would reveal it to me. Doubtless. Bitterness welled in me like blood from a fresh wound. Again, Selden beckons him closer, and Fitz is like, "How may I be of service?"
Yeah, this is sort of an awkward interaction. One, because I think Selden probably feels weird to be treated this way.
Yeah.
Although I don't know, Selden's a noble kid. He has had servants before, but it's a
They were
different
hard
culture.
on their luck, for sure.
That's true. Different culture as well, and different ways of seeing things. But here he has somebody sort of being a grown man being polite and overly helpful, and he clearly wants to talk about something. I think we really see the youthfulness of Selden in his awkwardness of not really knowing how to approach what he wants to say.
Yep.
He is trying to figure out if Fitz can help and how Fitz is connected to this sort of magic and how he knows Tintaglia.
Tintaglia especially, yes.
Yes. And so it's really interesting to sort of see that awkwardness play out, because you can tell he wants to say something, he's trying to get at something, but he doesn't know how to tactfully do it. And this is not really a good day to catch Fitz because he's already in a mood.
Right.
And so Fitz is just sort of trying to get out of this interaction as quick as possible.
There's a lot of Selden bringing up something, hoping to lead Fitz into the conversation and have Fitz kind of take it over, and Fitz just brushes it aside as the servant character. So Selden says, I feel as if I should know you. Do you understand what I speak about?" And Fitz just replies, "I beg your pardon, do you need help?" And Selden says, "I serve the dragon Tintaglia. I am here with the ambassadors from Bingtown and the representatives from the Rain Wild. They are my people and my kin. But I serve the dragon Tintaglia, and her concerns are my first ones." He spoke the words as if they should convey some deep message to me. I hoped that what I felt did not show on my face. It was confusion, not at his strange words, but at the odd feeling that rang through me at that name. Tintaglia. I had heard the name before, but when he spoke it, it was the sharp tip of a dream breaking through into the waking world. I felt again the sweep of wind under my wings, tasted dawn's soft fogs in my mouth. Then that blink of memory was gone and left behind only the uncomfortable feeling of having been someone other than myself for a sliced instant of my life. I said the only words I could think of. "Sir, and how can I assist you?"
This interaction, I feel like I don't understand why Fitz is trying so hard to get out of it because he could be learning vital insight into what they actually want and why these people are here. And this would be very helpful for what Chade has asked his help on specifically.
He's
And
not in work mode right now.
and he doesn't want to, so he's not going to. And so he's just sort of, despite all of these very interesting to me things that are like pulling me in, making me ask questions of like, what do you mean you think you know the name Tintaglia? It's a little annoying from my point of view. However, I understand why Fitz is making this choice.
Right.
But I do want to point out, somebody said, maybe it was you or maybe it was somebody who wrote in, that they believe that this whole memory of Fitz having dragon memories or whatever, that is specifically, in their opinion or your opinion, from his time with Verity as dragon, and that like his connection to Verity as dragon.
I think we talked about this either last episode or 2 episodes ago, because we discussed how you thought it was from the Cursed Shore.
Yes.
And I think I agreed with you on that. I don't know what brought that conversation up either, to be honest.
Well, either way, I swear you said, maybe we did get a comment. But
I think it was I think someone was talking about
who had
you
claimed.
have been claimed by a dragon.
Yes.
And that is obviously Verity as dragon.
Yes. Okay. Maybe I had said that I thought because of this. Yeah.
We
okay.
went off onto the dream tangent during that conversation, I think.
Okay. Well, I had that memory, so I wanted to say that I think that this has to mean that he did spend time in Tintaglia's dreams when he was on the Cursed Shores.
He did say he had weird dreams, I think.
Yes,
so.
And because he talks so much about this being the faintest hint of a memory of a dream and not something that has recently happened to him, although there is argument to say he hasn't been sleeping well. And I think somebody also said, Tintaglia said that he was reaching out to him or to her in this moment in time. So I don't know, maybe it is a new recent development and it's just very unclear, but I was like, hey, another point towards this might be Cursed Shore time.
Right.
He kind of vaguely has a memory, but he is not going to let Selden know that he has any idea what's going on.
Of course not.
And Selden really wants him to get what he's coming at without having to come right out and say it. And as he's waiting for Selden to sort of take the lead again, he takes this time to look over Selden and just sees all of the oddities about the elderling boy.
One of the things that I wanted to touch on is that Fitz describes Selden's scales as kind of glittering, similar to the tattoos, which is kind of like an interesting parallel as well. It's not necessarily the same thing or like comes from the same thing, but I thought that was an interesting parallel.
Yeah.
But Selden eventually is just like, okay, he's not going to say anything. Let's start again. Sighs, smiles, and just says, have you ever dreamed of dragons, of flying like a dragon, or of being a dragon? That was too close a hit. I nodded eagerly, a servant flattering at conversing with his betters. And he just says, yeah, haven't we all? Because the Six Duchies dragons were great. You know, that's what sticks in my mind, their greatness. And Selden's like, yes, exactly. You know, magnificence, greatness. Perhaps that is what I sensed in you. He peered at me, and I felt the bluish gleam in his eyes was more probing than the eyes themselves. I tried to retreat from that scrutiny. I glanced aside from him. I'm not alone in that, sir. There are many in the Six Duchies who saw our dragons a-wing. And some that saw far more than I did, for I lived far from Buckkeep then, out on my father's farm. We grew oats there, and raised pigs. Others could tell you far better tales than I could, yet even a single glimpse of the dragons was enough to set a man's soul on fire, sir. Selden kind of dismisses that with a gesture, but says, I don't doubt that they were, but I speak of another thing. I speak of real dragons, dragons that breathe, that eat and grow and breed just like any other creature does. Have you ever dreamed of a dragon like that? One named Tintaglia? I don't dream much, sir. Let the pause kind of grow long and then bobs his head and says, "And how may I be of service to you, sir?"
Right. He really wants to get out of this conversation. And
Yeah.
Selden is looking at him for a really long time, very silently. And so much so that Fitz is really debating just sort of leaving him standing there. Except that I seem to feel something in the air. Does magic hum? No, that is not quite the way of it, but it is a similar wordless vibration that one feels, not with the body, but with that part of the man that does magic or receives it. The wit whispers and the skill sings. This was something like both of them, and yet its own. It crept along my nerves and stood up the hair on the back of my neck. Suddenly his eyes snapped back to me. She says you are lying, he accused me. So this is him overhearing the conversation between, well, not overhearing truly, but in a way overhearing the conversation between Selden and Tintaglia.
Or sensing it of some sort. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because I don't think we ever really get to hear Fitz sensing conversation between other witted people. He worries of them hearing him,
Yeah.
but we don't really, or maybe he did at the dinner with
He does at the dinner because cats speak out loud to everybody
Yes.
else. I think it's something that's kind of programmed into him, something socialized into him of like, hey, that's your private conversation, but cats just kind of broadcast everything.
right.
So I think that was,
That's a unique thing.
yeah. Or they weren't taking care to be
Discreet.
private.
Yeah,
And Fitz was honing in on that, trying to listen. And normally he does not.
that's true. So anyway, so it's interesting here that this is described as a third thing.
Yeah.
Because
a mix of skill and wit, but not either of them.
yes, because I think we have been talking a lot about what is the dragon magic? Is it any different? Is it a mix of the two? And Fitz, a magic user of both magics, the skill and the wit, is saying it is a third thing. It is something that he is able to understand through his magics, it seems.
Yep. Like to both of them, but not.
Yeah. And he is able to converse with Tintaglia later. And so it does raise the question of sort of, I mean, to me, it raises the question of, does that mean that what Selden uses is not the skill? Is it this third magic unknown?
Elderling magic.
Elderling magic? Is that later in the next trilogy, or I guess quadrilogy, I suppose, we see Malta use magic to make lights glow in the air whenever she is talking with the Rainwild Council in the Rainwilds. And that is really interesting because we don't really see Fitz do that. So again, where is the territory of, is this its own magic? Is this, like
That's, I feel like,
different magic entirely?
the weakest thing of Robin Hobb's magic system. I know you want rules and stuff like
Yes.
that. I like how the skill and wit are. Elderling magic is, and I'm fine with scrying being kind of loosey-goosey or hedge magic being kind of loosey-goosey
Sure.
because it has like some sort of structure to it. But elderling magic is just kind of like, hey, there's another magic. Oh, it can create lights. Malta never explains how she did that or how it was, It's,
It only happens the one time.
yeah, it's very nebulous. It's very kind of nothing about it. It's not even used for plot,
Yeah.
really. It's just
there.
kind of there, but also at the same time, it's used for very pivotal moments.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I'm really kind of like, I wish there was a little bit more expounding upon that. But yeah, this is another thing here, and there's another mention of it before we get to this magic part, is where Fitz describes Selden's eyes, saying, the blue glow seems more inquisitive and like piercing than Selden's eyes did by themselves. It feels like Robin Hobb is kind of hinting that there's another presence there, kind of scrutinizing Fitz.
Yes. I would agree.
But as Selden says, she says, you're lying, Fitz says, sir, I was affronted as I could manage for the terror I felt. Something groped at me angrily. I felt as if swiping claws passed through me. Some instinct warned me to leave my skill walls as they stood, that any effort to reinforce them now would only display me to her, for it was unmistakably a she that sought to seize me. I took a breath. I was a servant, I reminded myself. And yet he reminds himself that any servant would take offense at a foreigner doing that. So
Yes. And I mean, to be fair, I think Fitz would use any excuse to get get some of this anger out that he's feeling. But he does sort of imply that maybe Selden has been drinking too much and that he should get back to his place. So he's sort of very rude to Selden in this moment of saying, clearly you've had too much of my queen's good wine.
perhaps go back to your room. Yeah.
Yeah. And Selden isn't really listening to what Fitz is saying. He just says, you have to help us. You have to make them help us. He did not seem to hear my words. Desperation tinged his own. She is stricken to the heart over this. Day after day she strives to feed them, but there is only one of her. She cannot feed so many, and they cannot hunt for themselves. She herself grows thin and weary with the task. She despairs that they will ever grow to a proper size and strength. Do not doom her to being the last of her kind. If these 6 duchies dragons of yours are any kind of true dragons, then they will come to her aid. In any case, the least you can do is persuade your queen that she must ally with us. Help us put an end to the Chalcedean threat. Tintaglia is true to her word. She keeps their ships out of the Rainwild River, but she can do no more than that. She dares not range further to protect us, for then the young dragons would die. Please, sir, if you have a heart in you, speak to your queen. Do not let dragons pass away from this world, because men could not stop their bitter squabbling long enough to aid them. And Fitz again says, sir, I think you've had too much to drink. You need to go now.
And good evening. And he walks away.
Yes. And this is kind of interesting because at first I was thinking, why does Selden know that Fitz has any sway with the queen at all? And I was trying to puzzle out if maybe Tintaglia knew, or Tintaglia can see through the lie or something. And then I realized I think Selden just knows that Fitz can hear Tintaglia, or knows of Tintaglia, and therefore must be like him, where he knows the greatness of dragons and should,
yes,
despite his station, push forward for the good of the dragon. So
that is 100% what I think is happening.
Yes. And so I wanted to point that out because I think to me that was a little confusing, and I did think for a long time that he was somehow knew who Fitz was. Maybe not.
He's still 11 years old,
he doesn't
maybe 12.
He doesn't understand the way of the world.
No,
a regular servant cannot simply go to the queen and say, help the Bingtown people, I believe in it.
Right. Yeah.
So I thought that was an interesting little detail. But Fitz is really shaken up, and he probably is reeling a little bit about the magic and how do they know, and why is he trying to get me to talk to the queen? Does he know something?
Great time to have a non-fight conversation with Beloved,
Truly,
who has connections with these people.
Right, but he would never, not in this moment in time. But he takes this retreat as time to leave the castle entirely. He's finally getting out. He is tired of everything. Everything has been weird. He doesn't know what to think. There's too much going on, too many different threads happening all at once of things, and he is just very frustrated. And then he takes his mind off of what's been happening at the castle and thinks of the other hardness in his life, which is Hap. And what is he going to do with Hap? And how it's impossible to get Hap to listen because he never would have listened. And there's nothing he can do or say that's going to fix this Hap and Sfonja problem.
He says, I tried to think how I could turn him around, make him return to his apprenticeship with a willing heart and eager hands. Make him set aside Sfonja until he could make an honest offer for her hand. Make him take up residence with his master. Make him live a tidy life, abiding by all the rules that could keep him safe, but never ensure him success or happiness. I thrust that last traitor thought aside. It angered me, and I turned that anger on my boy. He says I should have done what Jinna suggested earlier. But this is Fitz being like, I don't want to box my boy in because all of these rules are what was pressed upon me, basically.
Yeah. And I think I'm really hard on Fitz, especially with how he's doing with Hap right now. But I think at the heart of it, there is that want to let his boy have the world. It's the only kid in his care that he is allowed to sort of let loose to give
Find his
him
own
whatever.
happiness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever opportunity he wants, Fitz will be there to help him get. And it's just really frustrating to watch Hap sort of squander that opportunity over a woman when there is so much life left to live, and Hap doesn't really clearly understand what he's doing and why it's wrong and why he needs to wait. But there's also not a good way to get him to understand.
With his want to go back in time and take Jinna's advice of taking a hard line with Hap, he says, yeah, I would, take a firm line with him, punish him for disobeying me, take away both money and security until he had agreed to do what I wished, turn him out of Jinna's and tell him he must live with his master or fend for himself, force him to toe the line. I scowled to myself. Oh yes, that would have worked so well on me at that age. Yet something must be done. Somehow I had to make him see sense.
Yeah, he's really struggling to come up with what could possibly be a way to handle this.
Because Fitz is self-aware in this,
Yeah.
right? Like, he's very aware that, like, Hap is like Fitz was at that age, right? There's so much time that Fitz has spent thinking about Molly and his relationship with Molly when he was young compared to Hap and Svanja that he's like, yeah, nothing would stop me at that point. So
it's all just going to push
Hap
Hap
actually
away.
do? Yeah.
Yeah. And that pushing of Hap away is his fear because he doesn't want Hap to have nowhere to go, right? And that's what he felt. That's how he felt when he was that age and all these adults were telling him how to live and what to do. He just felt backed into a corner and like he had nowhere to turn. And so he's trying not to do that, but is still sort of backing Hap into that corner anyway. And as he is struggling and sort of frustrated, the best person who could possibly come by does, and it's Starling.
He's wary at first because of Laurel's warning. So
yes, and he hears the hoofbeats first, so he's like, "Oh God, they found me! It's finally happening."
Wasn't aware that it was Starling until she comes up and reins in right next to him and says, "Come on up on the horse. I'll ride you, give you a ride to Buckkeep Town."
Notably, she uses the name Fitz out loud when she says, "Get on my horse." She says, "Get on my horse, Fitz. I'll give you a ride," which is kind of annoying because she knows that he's going by Tom Badgerlock right now. She knows his persona. She knows that he is supposed to be on the DL. Nobody should know that he is Fitz, and she's just willy-nilly flinging out loud in public. I mean, they're on a road and it is presumably they're by themselves, but still, it is an open public place where anybody could hear, and she's saying, "Come on, Fitz." So I'm already annoyed, and so is Fitz.
He says, "The heart will flee anywhere when it is seeking comfort. I knew that and kept a rein on mine." "Thank you, but no. This road can be treacherous in the dark. You'd be risking your horse." "Then I'll lead him and walk beside you. It has been so long since we talked, and I could use a friendly ear tonight." "I think I would prefer to be alone tonight, Starling." She was silent for a moment. The horse jigged restlessly, and she pulled him in too tightly. When she spoke, she did not hide her irritation. "Tonight? Why do you say tonight when you mean I'd always prefer to be alone rather than with you? Why do you make excuses? Why don't you just say that you haven't forgiven me, that you'll never forgive me?" It was true. I hadn't. But that would have been a stupid thing to tell her. "Can't we just let it go? It doesn't matter anymore," I said, and that was true as well. She snorted. "Ah, I see. It doesn't matter. I don't matter. I make one mistake. I fail to tell you one thing that doesn't really concern you at all, and you decide not only that you will never forgive me, but that you will never speak to me again?" Her fury was building in an astounding way. I stood looking up at her as she ranted. The failing light touched her face indistinctly. She looked older and wearier than I had ever seen her, and angrier. I stood stunned in the flow of her wrath. "And why is that?" I asked myself. "Why does Tom Badgerlock dispose of me so easily? Perhaps I never mattered at all to you, save for one thing. One convenient little thing that I brought right to your door for you. One thing that I thought we shared in friendship and fondness and, yes, even love. But you decided that you don't want that from me anymore, so you throw all of me aside. You make that the whole of what we shared and discard me with it. And why? I confess I've given much more thought to it than I should, and I think I've found the answer. Is it because you've found another place to quench your lusts? Has your new master taught you his Gemalian ways? Or was I wrong all those years ago? Perhaps the fool was truly a man, and you've simply gone back to what you preferred all along. She jerked her horse's head again. You disgust me, Fitz, and you shame the Farseer name. I'm glad you've given it up. Now that I know what you are, I wish I had never betted with you. Whose face did you see all those times when you closed your eyes? Molly's, you stupid. Always Molly's. It was not true. I had not played that cheat on her or myself. But it was the most hurtful reply I could think of to her insult. She did not, perhaps, deserve it, and it shamed me that I would use Molly's name that way, but my festering anger had finally found a target this evening. Starling,
Okay.
yeah.
There's a lot to unpack.
There's two more lines of Starling, and then she's gone. So I'll finish that real quick,
and then we'll just
talk.
Backtrack.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she takes a couple breaths and then laughs shrilly and says, "And no doubt you mouth her name into your pillow as your Lord Golden mounts you. Oh yes, that I can imagine well. You're pathetic, Fitz, pathetic." And she spurs her horse cruelly and gallops onward.
Yeah. There's a lot. And
I'm going to preface this first off.
Okay.
I know we speculated that maybe Starling was pregnant earlier on.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that's true anymore, because when I read this scene, I'm like, oh, didn't Lord Fisher cheat on her and she found out? I feel like that was the case. I could be wrong. Be wrong. This could be like a hallucination in my mind of like, that's kind of coming full circle kind of thing. And it's like that moment for Starling, but I don't know for sure. But I feel like something happens with Lord Fisher. They either have a fight or something, and that's why she is inordinately angry in this scene.
I feel like she just thinks he cheated and he didn't. Like, okay. I don't I could be wrong. I don't distinctly remember, but I do feel like I vaguely know what you're talking of, but not enough to know for sure.
Yeah, there's, again, something wiggling in the back of my mind. It's just like, I feel like there was some sort of thing with Lord Fisher and Starling that happened.
We'll find out.
I think that, if it is true, is the start of her anger in this. Yeah. Obviously, it doesn't excuse everything, but like, I think that is where a lot of the thoughts come from this of like, hey, once you didn't want me anymore, you threw all of me aside because I'm not worth enough to you. Like, that's all I was to you. So I think that's a little bit of like links that I was putting together.
Okay.
Because it was kind of parallels to her own relationship at the current moment.
That's fair.
But that being said, we can start with what she says.
Yeah. I want to say that this whole thing, I think, is a really good look at who Starling is and her thought process. I also partially agree with some of her takes in this.
Yeah.
Nuance, crazy. But I think the most important thing in the text here is that Starling is hurt first and foremost that Fitz isn't continuing at least their friendship.
Right.
Like, I don't think she cares that they're not sleeping together anymore. I mean, obviously on some level she a little bit cares, but I don't think it's about that. I think it's just the fact that like they're not sleeping together anymore, and therefore Fitz isn't talking to her at all. And so in her mind, I think she feels like it does make it that they were just people who slept together, and it gets rid of the years of friendship and camaraderie that they've had. Yeah. And I totally feel for her in that. I do feel like Fitz is really bad about his sort of black and white navigation of the world of it's either all or nothing.
Yeah.
And he can't sort of seem to separate different aspects. That being said, the thing that he is trying to separate is that she's been married this whole time and cheating on her husband with him. That's
the one little thing that he didn't need to know. The one
little tiny thing that had nothing to do with him is that she has been cheating on her husband with him the whole time. And, well, maybe not the whole time, but a vast majority, at the very least, of the time that they've spent together. And so, like, on the one hand, yes, it is kind of unfair that he isn't trying to keep the friendship. But on the other hand, who would want to be friends with somebody who lied to them about something that they knew would go against the morals of the friend? Like,
Right. Yeah.
I'm not saying he's in the wrong. I'm saying that I understand her where she's coming from, and that
100%. Me too.
like, yeah, and I feel like she probably feels very guilty and is trying to put that guilt onto Fitz because him being so morally not pure, but just like so strong in his morals probably is a harsher mirror at what she's doing and the choices she's making. I feel
I don't know if personally, I don't know if she's taking it as a mirror or like making her feel guilty, but I feel like his strong stance on morals makes her think that he looks down on her, which he kind of does.
I mean, yeah, a little bit.
Because remember, we talked about her, how she uses her sexual choice and freedom as an empowerment move
Yes.
after her past. And I feel like having someone say, no, you can't do that is like, well, no, this is who I am. Like, this is how
Yeah.
I'm strong and I can make my own choices. Don't say that I'm a bad person for this.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it does walk that sort of line of the relationship to trauma that people can
Yeah.
have, and sort of the heart of why somebody acts the way that they do can be something that you can have compassion for, but that doesn't excuse the choices they make, and they still have to be accountable for the choices they're making. If you've been traumatized, you don't just get to blindly traumatize everyone else for the rest of your life because of that. You also have a duty to not traumatize others. And so, not that this is trauma, not that what she did to Fitz was trauma, but I just, in a general sense of sort of, I think this is a subject where there is trauma for Starling, and so she's using that as her shield to sort of
Right.
get away with whatever she wants because it is something that she's doing to help heal. It's a crutch that she's using, and that's not fair to others. And so that is tough, and it is hard because Fitz does miss their friendship. He does miss their companionship, and I think there was love there because, I mean,
Yeah.
she even says it, that there was love when they coupled together on her end.
And Fitz, when he was with Jinna, even says, like, with Starling, I didn't feel like this, really.
Yeah. So clearly there was a little bit of love on Fitz's end too.
They knew each other for 15 years.
Yeah. Even if you want to argue that it wasn't romantic love, I think on some level it was.
Yeah.
I think they did have
They went through a lot.
Yeah, I think they do have some sort of romantic relationship that is sort of, I mean, marred by the fact that it is an affair on Starling's part, but still a very long relationship, the longest Fitz has ever had. And so I think it's really annoying as a reader to have to sit there and watch Starling sort of attack Fitz for her actions, right? Like, we're annoyed, and especially because we know everything that Fitz has gone through and just how much her actions have hurt him. I think she thinks he's not feeling pain at all and that it was easy for him
Right.
to cut things off and to separate them.
It's because she's fundamentally a selfish character, right?
Yes.
And that's when you were talking about, like, using her trauma as a crutch. And she takes it as her worldview and puts that onto everybody else. So if they
Yes.
look down on that, it's an affront to her,
Yes.
right? It's not because the whole world revolves around her viewpoint
Yes.
and her. That's just kind of how it is with her.
Yeah. It's interesting that she's so successful as a
Performer.
when she is so selfish, but I don't know.
She's the stereotypical rock star,
Oh, yeah.
Me.
I do have sympathy for her in this moment, but it sort of ends when she then continues on her tirade to say it's just this one little thing that I didn't tell you. And it's like, all right, well, what's that little thing? Let's think about that. And
then it morphs into other things.
And then it morphs into homophobia and being like, you're disgusting and you're...
Okay, we'll stop right there.
Okay.
Because that goes to show that it's another look and insight into the Six Duchies' morality and their
Yes.
view on gay love or anything related to not just hetero love.
Yes, because we did talk last episode, but the earlier part of this chapter about how
Fitz has internalized homophobia
Fitz
as well.
has internalized homophobia, but also how
it's just societal.
Not, yeah, well, I'm trying to say,
Okay.
I think up until this point, it has been very ambiguous what the Six Duchies' thoughts and feelings might be towards LGBTQ people, right? Like, we don't have any definitive talk about it. Fitz is very uncomfortable about the idea and skirts around it, but we don't hear him talk about it. There are people that are making weird jokes at him, and that's not great, but
there's obviously people that are living in that world.
Yes.
Openly propositioning him. Well, subtly propositioning him.
Yes. So it's sort of ambiguous at this point what might be the feelings or thoughts of that sort of being part of that community. And here we get a very open and direct,
again, backed by anger, like personal anger towards the subject, but still it is disgust.
Yeah, and the fact that she's saying that he's shaming the Farseer name by doing this. And so I think that's really telling. And I know it's just one character. You can't say that that's how the whole of society is. But I think it is one character who gives us a very good insight into how other people are quietly feeling in a society, because you don't just say that without feeling like you're in the right morally. And Starling has been around a lot of different people, especially with her profession. So you'd think she would see a lot of different people and be open to different ways. And so for her to be disgusted and think it's shameful to be gay, it like kind of tells us that maybe it isn't as accepted and it's not as widely spread as you would think, just based off what we have seen so far in the text. And I think it does show maybe why Fitz was feeling the way he is, not even from his own point of view. He never uses the word that it's disgusting or shameful that this has happened. He is hurt that his friend would let others think this of him.
Yeah.
And it makes more sense now with this coming to light that maybe it's because he doesn't want people to think of him this way, and that it's hurtful that his friend would let people think of him as disgusting or shameful, even if people shouldn't feel that way or he doesn't agree. I think on some level he must, but I think it's really unfortunate that this was what he had feared, and here it is with Starling throwing it in his face. And something that feels very justified. He finally sticks it to her, tells her
clap back. Yeah.
He thought of Molly, calls her stupid. Love that. Don't love the other word he's using, but you know what? It's fine. And he does get to sort of stick it to her. And then he immediately feels bad and is like, I shouldn't have used Molly in that way. It's so bad. Molly doesn't care. Molly would want you to do worse. Let me just be clear there.
That's true. Molly would throw hands.
Molly's waiting for him to yank her off the horse, Like, it's not that hitting is the right answer. Violence is not the answer. But I feel the need to say
these are fictional characters. We can beat them up in our minds if we want.
I don't want to be on the record as saying I think that a man should beat up a woman. So I'm trying to be very
clipping it right now. Promotional on all of our social media.
Emma says no, but I do think that sort of it's kind of funny to think of him being like, no, Molly would be so mad. Molly does not care. Molly wants you to do worse. Molly wants you to call her more names and call her out for being selfish. So who I believe Molly to be, I suppose. But he does sort of immediately backtrack, and I think the fact that this does feel like a little kid fight in a way, because it is sort of just name calling and saying things that are mean and hurtful on purpose to hurt the other person. Yeah. And it's not very productive to anything. It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't make anybody feel good about it. And her to turn around and sort of be like, well, I bet that's what you think when Lord Golden's with you too, huh? And then to run away before you can say anything else. It's very immature and it's not great. And it doesn't help because Fitz is already really mad at Beloved. And this is just extra salt in that wound that is
Right.
already pretty packed full of salt.
So he walks to town.
And he hopes she breaks her neck in the way that she was riding carelessly on that horse.
For a savage instant, he says.
Yes. And then it probably immediately feels bad.
But he doesn't go to the stuck pig. Instead, he goes to the Dog and Whistle, an ancient tavern he once frequented with Molly. And he just sits there and thinks and drinks. He's thinking about what it was like to be 15 and in love, and so terribly certain that love conveyed wisdom and shaped fate.
He also says he's thinking of Molly as he's sitting here. As I drank, I remembered her. She, at least, had loved me true. And I think this is another thing about Fitz that I notice as a rereader, that he is very stuck on this idealized version of Molly. Molly loved him more than anyone else. She accepted him and she was perfect. And while I do like Fitz and Molly together as a couple, I do think they were really cute. I do like that they get together at the end. I feel like his whole Molly loved me more than anyone else. She loved me true. She didn't care is not true. Like, the whole reason she left him and he didn't get to see the birth of his daughter or know about her from Molly is because Molly was so fed up with him telling her lies. She wanted him to follow her and say, I'm sorry, and choose her, but he didn't. And she didn't want to accept that. Like, there's just so much that I think he's glossing over. And yes, he is then going in to talk about how, like, that helps him know that there's nothing he can do to help Hap because he would have felt the same way. That was it not his right to be with her because of the love that they felt that was so pure. But it is sort of rose-colored glasses on the past because they did fight a lot and there was a lot of disagreement and a lot of Molly not understanding other aspects of him. And she liked the version of Fitz that she knew, but he wasn't truthful even with her. And so I just want to point out that is said, even though it is not true.
He eventually says that the wisdom of 3 tankards of ale after a sleepless night and a long day of unsettling news persuaded me that the best thing to do would be to go to Jinna and tell her that she had been right. Somehow that would make things better. The fuzziness of why that would be so did not dissuade me. I set out for her door through the quiet night. He reaches Jinna's door and knocks as he almost comes to his senses, but he decides to knock anyways. Perhaps I just needed a friend, any kind of a friend, that badly.
I feel like that phrasing is kind of mean on Fitz's part. He needs a friend, any kind of friend. Jinna is such a non-person to him in, like, the kindest way from my read, but, like, he doesn't like Jinna, and he does. Like, he really likes the comfort he gets from having someone to talk to who is outside of the mess of the Farseers and everything going on in his personal life. And he likes knowing someone who only knows the facet of himself. It's sort of like his relationship with Molly, and that he gets to control who this person thinks of him as. And when it steps outside that, it's uncomfortable for him because it isn't a real relationship. It's so surface level. But also, like, he does keep coming back and he does keep spending time with her. I don't know.
I viewed it kind of differently.
Okay.
I viewed it as he doesn't know if they're friends right now because he hasn't apologized to her. He hasn't talked to her since he was hugging Laurel. Like, there's been no communication for a while.
That's fair.
So it's just like, I need any sort of friendly face, even if it's not very friendly to begin with.
Okay, that's a nicer read, I guess.
But she asks who's there, It's me, Tom Badgerlock. She shut the top half of the door. It seemed like a long time before she unlatched the whole door and opened it to me. Come in, she said, but her voice sounded as if she didn't care if I did or didn't. And he just says, I don't need to come in. I just wanted to tell you that you were right. And you are drunk. Come in, Tom Badgerlock. I've no wish to let the night cold into my house. And so I went in instead. Fennel had already claimed her warm spot in her chair, but he sat up to look at me disapprovingly. Fish? No fish. Sorry. Sorry is not fish. What good is sorry? He curled up again and hid his face in his tail. I admitted it. Sorry isn't much good, but it's all I have to offer. Jinna looked at me grimly. Well, it's far more than anything else you've given me lately. That last line he said out loud, so Jinna responded to it.
Yes, which is an example of Fitz getting lucky with what he says and when.
I don't know if that's luck, because it says I admitted it. I think he actually
did intend it for Jinna.
Yeah.
Had to learn it from a cat, though.
But again, he apologizes and says, like, you were right about Hap. I should have listened to you. And after a pause, she says, do you want to sit down for a while? I don't think you should try to walk back to the castle just now. So obviously he's
way drunker than he thinks.
Yes, acting a little bit more drunk than Jinna thinks is safe.
He is a little bit emotional, which I don't think is normal externally. Internally, he's always emotional, but he's externally very verbally emotional now, and that is odd for Tom Badgerlock.
For a short time, they stare into the fire, and then she says, there's something you should know about Svanja's father. He's a lot like you. It takes some time for him to get his temper up. Right now, he just feels grief over what his daughter is doing. But as it becomes common talk in town, there will be men who will goad him about it. Grief will change to shame, and not long after that, to fury. But it won't be against Svanja that he vents it. He'll go after Hap, as the culprit who has deceived and seduced his daughter. By then, he'll be righteous as well as angry, and he is strong as a bull. I told Hap this. What did Hap say? That he wasn't afraid. I told him that it had nothing to do with it, and that sometimes being stupid and being not afraid were two twigs of the same bush. That pleased him, no doubt. He went out. I haven't seen him since. And again, they go over how they're not going to be able to find either of them, Hap or Svanja.
Right.
Well, at least Rory Hartshorn didn't find them last night either, Jinna continues, so they're probably safe for now. Why can't he just keep his daughter in at night? Then no one would have a problem. She narrowed her eyes at me. No one would have a problem if you could keep your son in at night, Tom Badgerlock. I know, I admitted resignedly. And a moment later, I added, you really shouldn't have to deal with any of this.
Yeah. So, period, Jinna, tell him if you could just keep your son in. It's not Svanja's fault alone. Takes two to tango. But it is one of those things where Fitz is just tired and this is hard and his boy is in danger and there's not a lot he can do because he didn't take action to begin with.
Right. And he's just trying to squeeze out his thoughts and admit hard things. And being tipsy for him probably helps a lot.
Oh, yeah. He's definitely let down some walls.
Yeah, because he also is able to add on, when Svanja's father decides to look for Hap, he'll look for him here. I never meant to bring all this trouble to your door, Jinna. I started out just wanting a friend, and now everything is a mess, and it's all my fault. I suppose I'd best go face up to Rory Hartshorn. Wallow in it, Tom Badgerlock, she said in disgust. What on earth would you say to the man? Why must you take full credit for everything that goes wrong in the world? As I recall, I met Hap and befriended him long before I knew you. And Svanja has been trouble looking for a place to sprout since her family came to Buckkeep Town, if not before. And she has two parents of her own. Nor is Hap the blundering innocent in this. You've not been dallying with Hartshorn's daughter, Hap has. So stop bemoaning what a mess you've made and start demanding that Hap take responsibility for himself. You've quite enough messes of your own to clean up without claiming responsibility for everyone else's. I stared at her in amazement. It's simple, she said quietly. Hap needs to discover consequences. As long as you claim that it's all your fault for being a bad parent, Hap doesn't have to admit that a good share of this is his own fault. Of course, he doesn't think it's a problem yet, but when he suddenly perceives that it is, he's going to come running to you to see if you can fix it, and you'll try because you think it's your fault. So what should I do? I don't know, Tom Badgerlock, but telling Hap this is all your fault is certainly something you should not do.
Yeah. So finally, someone's talking sense into him. And honestly,
It's good insight, too.
it is good insight. I think Svanja's got not Svanja. I think Jinna has a good head on her shoulders and is a good person to talk to about parenting troubles. I think literally anyone would have been good to talk to about the troubles that he's been going through, but Fitz refuses to talk to anyone. So this is the first time he's had a chance to get outside perspective.
Right.
And maybe it only works because it is coming from Jinna. I don't know if he would care what Beloved had to say about raising a kid because Beloved doesn't have one. He wouldn't trust Chade because Chade would be kind of crazy. Even if he said this, he would be like, nah, that's manipulative. But because it's Jinna and he doesn't have the sort of background of knowing what how
There's
Jinna
no baggage
is.
there.
No, it's easier to take the advice as solid advice from a friend.
Yeah.
And also Jinna doesn't really have stake in the game, whereas it would feel like his other friends do.
She technically does have stake in the game.
She does,
which she corrects here and says, well, I'm going to turn him out away from my house. Take back your money. I haven't spent any of it. He's not going to get it. I'm turning him out of my house. It's a consequence.
Yes. And again, period, Jinna, like she's finally Hap is going to suffer consequences of his actions, and she advises that Fitz doesn't clean up the mess for him. She tells him to sort of make Hap do it for himself, make him realize that this is a problem that he has to solve. And then once he has tried, if he still fails, then you can come help.
And Jinna says, I also think you might be wise enough to leave it up to him, Hap, to have to ask Master Gindas to let him stay at the house, rather than Fitz going over to Master Gindas' place and saying, like, hey, can my boy stay with you?
Yes, yeah. And Fitz says, I winced at the thought of how much pride Hap was going to have to swallow. A moment later, I felt an odd sense of relief. Hap could do that for himself. I didn't have to humble myself on his behalf. I think she saw it on my face. Not every problem in the world belongs to you alone, Badgerlock. Let others have their share. And then he says, Jinna, you're a true friend. She gave me a sideways look. So, you figured that out, have you? And then he realizes she's still angry. And so he decides to explain the woman that she saw him hugging in the tavern wasn't anyone. It's just a friend who he was comforting. Yeah. They're just friends. There's nothing else that goes on. I don't bed with her.
Yeah. It's funny because Jinna, like, and some problems belong only to you, Tom Badgerlock, entirely.
Yes.
Looking at him. And then he explains that.
And then he explains, oh yeah, hey.
The words clattered awkwardly out of me like dropped crockery and lay between us, all sharp shards. A long silence followed. Jinna looked at me, then into the fire, and then back at me. Tiny glints of anger and hurt still danced in her eyes, but a very tiny smile played around the corners of her lips as well. I see. Well, that is good to know, I suppose. And now you have 2 friends that you don't bed with. Her meaning was unmistakable. That comfort would not be offered to me tonight, and perhaps never again. I will not pretend I didn't feel disappointment. But there was relief as well. Had it been offered, I would have had to refuse it. I'd already been through the consequences of refusing a woman once tonight. I nodded slowly to her words. The water in the kettle is hot, she pointed out. If you wanted to stay, you could make tea for us. It was not forgiveness. It was a second chance to be friends. I was happy to accept it. I got up to find the pot and cups.
I do want to say Fitz's relationship with Jinna and his, like,
he's very awkward about what she was proposing to begin with, right?
Yeah.
And he didn't know how to emotionally navigate anything about that. And maybe that's because he was stunted by Girl on a Dragon, and all those like feelings of love couldn't be mature enough
Right.
to handle like a friend with benefits, but also still be friends because his
Yeah.
experience was with Starling. I don't know.
But also, like, I feel like he was very successfully just friends with benefits with Starling for a decade, if not more.
Yeah.
And so it's odd that he can't separate that, like, you can do both things and it can be fine. Maybe it's because he didn't have to, like, go to Starling. Starling was the one
Yeah.
coming to him.
True.
And I don't know. I also just, I think personally, kind of have a problem with his whole wishy-washy, like, he doesn't want to sleep with her, but he does attitude, because it's confusing for Jinna, but it's also like confusing to me personally. I just like it. He seems to frame it like he has to sleep with her if
I don't
she
see
asks.
that ever at all.
I feel
No.
like that's just the way I read it. Like, it's so uncomfortable because he's so much like, it just feels like
No,
he feels put out saying no, but also he doesn't want to say no. He just doesn't want. He wishes it wasn't Jinna.
Right. Well, no, it's a temptation to him, right? It's like, yeah, it would be, if it's offered, it would be so nice to sleep with you, but I shouldn't morally. And if it's offered, like, it's not good for me, and therefore I'm doing a disservice to you if I accept. But if you offer it, I will be tempted to say yes.
I guess. I don't know. I
You're
just
not a
personally-
man, Emma.
Yeah, I'm not a man. I don't know what a man goes through. I like personally have no trouble being like, no thanks. Like,
Well,
obviously,
Fitz is so alone, right? Like, he even talked about it about Starling, like at the very beginning of the conversation. It's just like, I have to guard my heart because I know where it flees to for comfort, right? And he was worried that if he got up behind the horse of Starling, that could lead to something. And he's just like, yes, I'm super alone right now, but these are bad decisions, right? He's being mature. He's
That's
being like,
true.
he's actually making good decisions, and we're just hearing the thought process of those good decisions.
that's fair.
So he knows what he seeks in comfort, or what he is habitually gone to for comfort, and that's Starling. And like, Beloved is even offered, like, hey, there's Starling there.
True.
Have some comfort because Night Eyes is dead.
Yeah.
And Fitz is deciding to make these good decisions not to do that because it's actively harmful to himself emotionally and the relationship with Jinna.
Right.
So I think just viewing that internal debate and that, like, okay, I need to make this good decision, but it's still a tough decision to make, is what's kind of tripping you up.
Yeah, I guess. I feel like also the phrasing of
It's also Robin Hobb writing it.
It is.
You know, like,
yeah. It's hard because I think I don't love the, like, to me it's framed as like a little bit like coercion, but not, it's hard to, I don't know how to talk about this in a way. I'm not skilled enough to explain this in a way that I think will accurately get across what I'm saying to everyone, which is impossible anyway. But I think my main issue with it is, like, I don't like the idea of downplaying a situation in which a person feels like they can't say no versus a person who would say yes no matter what, and then, like, is sort of trying to battle that, like, urge because it's not good for them mentally, I guess. I don't know. I don't think I'm phrasing this well. It just, like, my brain is having trouble with that crossover.
Okay.
And, like,
I didn't even, in the reading of any of their interactions, I didn't even go into that in my mind. Like, that wasn't on my mind at all.
That's fair. I don't know. Maybe it's, again, like a lived experience thing. Maybe it's just woman versus man. Ooga ooga, you know?
We're so
like,
different.
We're
you know?
so different. No, I don't know. It just, like, when I read it personally, and I don't know, maybe this isn't interesting to people to hear about, like, the weird nuances of my brain, but also you are listening to episode 300 and something of a podcast. 302 of a 2-hour long, basically, episode podcast. So maybe you do want to hear my opinion and my worldview, but I don't know. I guess like the way I read it, it just like makes it more uncomfortable because there is that sort of essence. I think also somebody wrote in saying they felt like there was some level of Jinna forcing Fitz to say yes by being so persistent, which also I feel like isn't fair to Jinna because I don't think Fitz is expressing at all that there's disinterest. Although I don't know, that could be argued. Maybe he is when every time he gets done sleeping with her and is like, "Hey, this sucks because we don't have feelings for each other." Maybe that should be enough for her to not want to sleep with him because that's not a super eager partner. Like consent is many different forms, but I don't know. I think it just like my brain reading this makes that part is really uncomfortable because I just don't understand the sort of I want to, but I don't because it's like in my mind, maybe I am being too black and white about it. Where in my mind, you either want to or you don't. Like, I don't know. And maybe that's just how I come to those sort of relationships is like, I'm not a casual person, so none of it makes sense.
It's a very dense chapter.
This
is part 2, and we're already long episode here. We have the full part 1 to talk about, and that's going to be a big part in the next couple chapters, I would guess.
Yeah.
And they get to speak calmly and rationally about their disagreements between Lord Golden.
Everybody
and
makes perfect
Fitz.
points,
Yes.
and nobody does any low blows.
Mm-hmm.
It's like super civil, surprisingly.
Yeah.
No, wait, that's the fanfic I wrote about how the conversation goes.
Exactly.
No, it's going to be a hot mess, and I hope you're all ready for it.
Yeah. Thank you for tuning in to this episode. Please let us know your thoughts on everything that we discussed. There's a lot going on, so please let us know what you got at isfitshappy@gmail.com or go to our website, isfitshappy.com. You can find links to all of our social medias on there. I think the more links goes to our link tree. I think it's links.isfitshappy.com you can go to as well for a direct link to that. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Reddit. It is Fitz Happy at all of those places. So please leave a comment, send us a DM, whatever you got to say.
Can't wait to hear from you.